I've always just been driven to like learn. I've always loved music, right?
Okay.
Like, so like the music I've been listening to, I just always wanted to like sit down and play. And at the time, you know, Rage Against the Machine I was listening to when I was in elementary school, and like Nirvana and stuff like that, and like Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix and the Police, like the Who, those types of bands. Like my dad, the Who especially, like his favorite drummer is Keith Moon. He loves Neil Peart, which isn't necessarily like I appreciate that style more now, but prog stuff was never like what I was into. I was more into like a more punk rock.
I was into a drum kit I could carry.
Exactly. And it wasn't like the style of the time. I mean, when I was growing up that young, like the 90s era grunge scene or whatever, it was more about the minimal,
Yeah.
you know, 4-piece kit. And
Did you find that in
being
London too?
more
Because
punk influence.
I know growing up in the 90s here in Windsor, like to us, like going to London to sort of explore the punk scene in London was like a big deal for us. You know what I mean? Was there a scene for you coming through?
Yeah, I mean, I love London. Like, London's, and the people in London are like so supportive of like what I do, and they're just like incredible to me. Like, I can't say enough and thank them enough. But the one thing I will say is like, I've kind of seen the music scene, especially like the rock scene, sadly kind of die in that city, I think, a little bit compared to what it was. And I even hear before, like when I was young, it was even crazier. Like the whole punk scene, like Bad Brains would come, and like all these like incredible, legendary punk bands. It was like a really sought after scene. And when I was there's still rock. There was still like the Embassy was there, and Call the Office was like in its prime, and like I can't remember the name of that. It's the Brunswick. The Brunswick was around, and now it's a parking lot. Like a lot of the rock bars that I grew up going to are gone, and that kind of is sad. But
the whole
times are moving on, and I can't because I don't want to sound like an old dude that's like nostalgia.
But you know,
what I mean?
it's funny because you sort of come from it from a perspective that's a little bit different than a lot of people that I hear talk about this stuff. And it's when I hear a lot of people talk about, you know, the bars that I grew up with are closing down, it's usually local hometown guys, right? And who don't spend a lot of time going out and seeing other things. But you've had that experience, right? Like you've actually seen the change in the music industry from inside of it a little bit. Do you have a perspective on that? Because you travel all over the place, and it's not only London where that's going on. Right?
No, it's all over. You're right. It's like London's not just that. It's I think in general, like the live, we're just in a time where I think that more like rock roots punk kind of scene is just not. It's not in its prime right now, and I'm sure it's growing. Like for instance, there's like bands in London like Whoopzo are incredible, and like I saw them at Dakota Tavern in Toronto, and I was just like blown away by it. And there's like bands like Idols and Shame and Rolling Blackouts from Australia, like all these bands. There seems like there's this underbelly of like this scene rising, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's gonna be like a whole renaissance of like, you know, the next Strokes or Nirvana, whatever it is that just kind of breaks rock to like more of a mainstream. But at the same time,
it's weird.
I'm
right?
never like sure if that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I look at this. I'm like always like, you know, you listen to the radio, you're like, oh, why is there all this like pop? Like we're listening to alternative rock. Why does it sound like dance music? What's going on?
Right.
But there is all this music out there that is a little more. You have to dig for it. It's less accessible to like the mainstream, of course, but it's out there. And maybe that is the golden era of a scene, of a rock scene.
You know,